Startups begin in communities across the country.
Why does Silicon Valley get so much credit? My name is Nick Kastner.
And I'm Caitlin Clays. We're interviewing the people building startup communities across America.
But in the areas no one is talking about, the middle.
This is the Ecosystem Builder Podcast by mug.news.
Today's ecosystem builder is Hunter Bergman from Lincoln, Nebraska. Hunter is an entrepreneur, content creator, and co-founder of Startups UNL. I also have a podcast separate to this called The Commonwealth, and Hunter produces that podcast. I've known Hunter for quite some time. Very good friends. Hunter, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm very excited, Nick, because I think a lot of what we do on the Commonwealth is sort of that ecosystem building. And so I'm really stoked to kind of share what we've been doing on campus, but also in the community with all of the listeners of the Ecosystem Builders podcast.
Yes. And I think your story and your work is unique because you've built so much programming to engage students with the local and even statewide ecosystem that it's definitely a unique perspective. So I'm excited to get into it. Hunter, but to start with, and this question, even while we're really good friends, I don't know the answer to this very first question of how did you get involved in the startup scene in Lincoln?
Oh, coming out with the bangers right away. And I think to answer your question, and this kind of, I'll kick it back to my journey a little bit in terms of, I have a little bit different journey than most in terms of college. I started out at a community college. I played JUCO soccer for 1 year and realized that, sports is a full-time job. And then I got into, media and, I actually was the editor of their student-run newspaper. So I got into podcasting, photography, videography, web development, and really learned some tools that, we use in the Commonwealth to kind of tell the story of individuals. But fast forward, I graduated from Northeast Community College, great school, and then went to University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And I actually remember I was sitting in the library at Northeast Community College, and I was talking to Tom Fields. And I was like, he was like, yeah, we have a student doing $2 million in revenue. And I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to be the student who goes to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and, begins their entrepreneurial journey. Because I was a hustler and I developed some really good media skills that I saw a value. And so that's kind of where it started. And so I was like, I want to be part of the Engler program, and do those sorts of things. They've got a phenomenal program over there, building business after business. And so I wrote that down and it kind of got tucked away. And then fast forward to when I actually I was on a campus visit. I will never forget this. I was on a campus visit and I actually was in the College of Business. And it's so funny when you're not in the College of Business, you have as an external student walking in, it's so hard to find answers, right? You're like, okay, what do you guys have on marketing? Can you tell me more about the marketing program? Well, here's this write up, but you're like, no, I have these skills and this is what I want to do, but can you help me, find the right program for me? And they're like, well, you can go talk to them. So I went up to the marketing department and talked to the marketing department. And I was like, this is my skill set. This is what I want to do. And they're like, oh, that's great. And I told them about my love for entrepreneurship. And so they actually sent me to the Nebraska Center for Entrepreneurship that was just, on the third level of Hawks Hall. I went to the Nebraska Center for Entrepreneurship, and I found Mr. Brent Martin, Sam Nelson, Katie Hunt. Just some great people. So I went in there, and I was like, guys, I've got this idea for a company, and I want to, I was talking to them about it, and your idea is kind of your own. Is a very secure thing. So I was just talking to them and, then I kind of pitched it at the end and I really found my first friends. And I found my home, right? I was like, these are the people that I want to be around. And then fast forward, because I was a transfer student and the Engler program is a minor. And so it was so difficult to figure out how to work that in and balance things out. And I was so overwhelmed already. And since it's on East Campus, it was difficult, kind of a barrier. And so I just found a home at the Center for Entrepreneurship. And, ever since then, I've been working on, one of the first things I did was I read, it's funny. met Katie there, and then fast forward to school, and there was a job description for like to work at the Center for Entrepreneurship. I'm like, I have to be in that position. Like, I love entrepreneurship. I love people. Let's do this. So I like saw it and I went up there and I talked to him about it, and they're like, yeah, just apply for it. And so I waited a little too long, and I found that they took the job position down because so many people applied for it. So I didn't apply in time. So I walked in there, and it just so happens I was on the ski team with this kid named Mason Matt, and he was like making the schedule of the interviews for the people getting interviewed for the position. I was like, yo, you should write me in there so I can get an interview to work at the Center for Entrepreneurship. So I was like hustling to try to get my way in there. And that's kind of, they saw my name in there, and I scheduled an interview, and they're like, you don't need to come in. Like, you showed your hustle enough. So that's where it all began, and I started reading, I was like one of the first like interns or like student workers that the center has ever really had. Katie, shout out to her. She's a great human being, now works at Turbine Flats. But she kind of took me under her wing. She already had ecosystem connections, already was an entrepreneur herself, and was really connected to the community. So I just like sat next to her and just went to events. We went to 1 Million Cups, and just really she made the connections, helped me make connections, and really was one of my first friends on campus. That I had, friends that I went to school with and stuff, but outside of my friend group, she was one of the first people to show me and get me in love with the Nebraska or the Lincoln's startup community. All that to say, and then the fast forward to my first day at the office, and I was like, I don't know what to do, because it was very ambiguous, working in the Center for Entrepreneurship, and being part of a new program that they were kind of putting in swing. I didn't really know what to do. So they were like, just do research on ecosystems. I was like, okay, whatever that is, I don't know. Yeah. Like, you mean trees? And like, I watched the documentary where Yellowstone, reintroduced wolves and stuff. So I was like, I was like, I enjoy Yellowstone and stuff. So, definitely not what an entrepreneurial ecosystem is. I then dove into the Kaufman Ecosystem Playbook 3.0,
which our listeners would be very familiar with.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I took a ton of notes. I mean, I still have like my guidebook that I have highlighted in notes and stuff. And then I, really started getting involved with, that's kind of, I'll transition into one of my first, I actually started putting pen to paper and exercising, my love for this like ecosystem development. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't want to just dump straight into it. Oh.
No. You're good, Hunter. First off, there's a few points of that I absolutely love. The having your buddy write your name down because you didn't apply in time is classic Hunter Bergman. That is the textbook Hunter Bergman. So you mentioned that connecting with Tom Field really kicked off your whole like entrepreneurial journey. And Tom Field is the, I guess, founding director, I believe, of the Angler program, which is an ag entrepreneurship program at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. How did you first connect with Tom?
Network effects, man. Network effects are so huge. And if any entrepreneur knows the power of your network. And so I was really involved in this club called, it's a student organization it's one of the largest actually professional collegiate organizations, and it's called Phi Beta Lambda. And so I was actually super involved. It's FBLA PBL, and PBL is the collegiate version of FBLA. And so that's after my, stun in JUCO soccer. I, got super involved in this, and I actually wanted to start an entrepreneurship organization on campus at Northeast Community College. But when I went and asked my advisor how I was going to do that, she was like, we have this business club or organization, right, that already is developed. You don't have to do anything else. And it gives you a really good opportunity to learn how their systems work and grow from there. And, that was one of my first mentors, Angie Schaefer, bless her heart. She really taught me some very valuable things. And so that really got me thinking about student organizations and stuff. But I actually then became the president of Nebraska PBL, and which is like, the entire state. And so it was fun to really, look at the macro perspective and provide these students with the professional resources they needed. And then through that, our Lincoln chapter, we had about like 100 members or something like that. I can't really remember. And one of them I was like talking to them at one of our conferences and was like, hey, I'm coming to Lincoln. I love entrepreneurship. I want to get involved. And they're like, well, I actually get, I go to school and I work on my business. And I was like, okay, like I want to check that out. And so she's like, you should check this out. And then, somehow I knew somebody who knew Tom Fields. I don't know how it really happened, but we got on the phone call and he really inspired me to chase, and take up residency in the Silicon Prairie, which is, I think Lincoln is at one, like the forefront of the Silicon Prairie.
Yes, most definitely. I ask because I think like leaders of local ecosystem builders, or like local ecosystem builders may be interested in how do you engage young people in their own ecosystem, which is why I asked. And Hunter, so you are the co-founder of Startups UNL, which I think I heard. I was there from the first time, like, where you're like, hey, I want to start a club at UNL dedicated to startups and entrepreneurship. And it was just an idea and you were kind of pooling together a team. And now there's like 80 members. You guys are going to Chicago in a couple weeks. Like as a club, you all take donations from the community. It's a whole big thing. And I'm interested in how that kind of went about. And so I guess first, could you sense the interest among young people for entrepreneurship? Like how did the startups club come to be?
Totally. Yeah. And I think I'll touch on some stuff that I learned in the ecosystem playbook and then how I applied that to Startups UNL. And actually, so shout out to Ryan English. So Ryan English and Jacob Oriana, Katie Hunt, and some other people actually created this student organization called Big Red Startups. And that was about 2 years ago. And so I actually got super involved with them. I was doing their marketing. I became the first CMO or whatever is kind of what I called myself, chief marketing. So, and then we were helping plan, competitions. And we actually were getting ready to do this huge event with a startup LNK, and I think it's called the Lincoln Economic Community Foundation or LPED, a Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development, I believe. Yes. And, hopefully I didn't butcher that. Sorry, Christina. No. So I was involved with there, and I didn't co-found it, right? So, but I felt like we were kind of the next generation, right? Katie and
You didn't co-found it? It was already in existence?
No, it was already in existing. Yes. Yep.
I stand corrected.
It was existing.
Hot damn. Well,
I know.
You definitely like revolutionized. It was like, because I was in school. I graduated a few years before you came to UNL, and there was the club was not significant at all. And now it has a significant presence. Like if you ask most students, they'll know what Startups UNL is. So I stand corrected. I totally gave you the credit for starting the organization. Okay, but so then how? Carry on, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So no, I appreciate that. But however, I did not found it. However, we were part of the team that actually rebranded as Startups UNL. And we wanted to rebrand as Startups UNL because we wanted to be kind of a bridge from Startups UNL to Startup LNK, that community foundation, right? So we wanted to position ourselves as allies and kind of that dynamic, right? The when you think of startups, that's university startups. When you think of startup LNK, that's community startups. And so so I took a lot of the information and knowledge that I learned in Nebraska PBL. Since I was the president, I learned our systems, how to create agendas and how to grow specific chapters and whatnot, and how to really just engage people. And so I kind of decided to, continue to build it up. And, we started doing obviously the pandemic really happened, and we rebranded, and we had one semester on campus during that time, and all of a sudden this pandemic happened, and we didn't know what to do, and we actually started doing, and this was in conjunction with the Nebraska Center for Entrepreneurship and my job. We started doing 2 monthly or weekly events, right? We did 2 weekly events. The first one was Monday Motivation Co-working, and really shout out to all of the professionals in the community that actually just jumped at the opportunity to mentor students and learn with them. We could not be where we are without the community for sure. But the Monday Motivation Co-working, we brought on a subject matter expert, and every student on there was about 5 continuous students from week to week. And it was open to the community as well. every person would ask one question that would try to further their startup or their idea or what was going on. Obviously, Startups UNL serves a little bit more of the early stage entrepreneur, like from idea to definition, less of the let's scale and get venture capital kind of thing. But we really built it so that anybody could join that and listen and learn from other people too. And then we brought on Founder Friday. And so Founder Friday was, just a hangout session, very casual, with some founders in the local community. We had Taylor Monks with Basic Block, which he brought the heat. We had some really great people on there that helped us, actually really pioneer and solidify our foundation. And in doing so, we actually built up huge demand. And we actually grew so fast that we couldn't really engage all these members. So we had like a group me with like 80 people in it. And like, we were trying to communicate and go through and build our systems. But, those two really big things served as, on-ramps and intersections. These are two things from the Kaufman playbook that I really took and actually it served as like the stories and culture piece too, right? Like I have been really, really intrigued, but also very, for sure trying to go out of the way to develop these core values of our student organization that will not only, keep the ecosystem alive and growing on campus, but also create it so it can grow and expand sustainably. Because right now we have, if you ask any Startups member who's pretty active, they say, it's just unique, right? We're a unique group of people who are always down to support people. And so, that was really a fun opportunity for me to really explore building the on-ramps, intersections, stories, and culture into like one kind of big project, right? I was like, this is what I want to do in the direction I want to go. And COVID happened. We had to pivot. We went online. We were actually one of the first adopters of like Zoom events. We did them consistently. We were in newsletters and stuff, and we really got it down. We had a ton of fun. Some people in the community, loved Founder Friday, and it was great. So that happened, and we decided to continue to run with it. And we are building our processes so they're more refined, so we can do more fun things. You mentioned the Chicago trip. The Nebraska Center for Entrepreneurship actually saw our potential and began to invest in us, right? Because, the students, for the students, by the students is our number one reason to be successful, right? And it's so easy in the university system. The university is very counterintuitive to the startup philosophy, right? Startups go fast and break things, and universities have, barriers and all those types of things. So
processes, a bunch of red
tape. Exactly, man. And rules, we break rules. We broke a lot of rules, and to a certain extent, but the center, saw that we were doing something very great, and so they were like, let's how can we invest back into this community, right? And so I actually built this project called the Summer Impact Team. We actually extended an invite to 20 students to have them, our number one thing in Startups is we're a community, not a commitment, right? Like we're here for you when you need us. You don't have to be super plugged in, but if you need anything, we're here for you. We're accessible and we're open and inclusive. But this one was like the next step. Like right now, during the month of June, we did trainings, right? So we did 3 trainings, one on the entrepreneurial process, one on leadership. We brought in Sean Welch, who had a great opportunity with the Sean Welch Co. And then the third one was the ecosystem playbook. We went through the ecosystem playbook, how to build an ecosystem, what it means to be part of that, and how we can do our part to continue the torch. And so then July, all these students will write down one impact statement that will help move the needle in the ecosystem, right? Whether it's building a category for resources or we have some people doing some really cool stuff. And we'll actually, if you go follow the Nebraska Center for Entrepreneurship and Startups UNL on Facebook, Instagram, you'll kind of see our journey. But it's so exciting, and we're going to do the impact statement. And then after that, we were going to reward them by going to Chicago and touring the local ecosystem in Chicago and teaching them what a really large ecosystem looks like, so they can identify, now that they know what an ecosystem is and how to identify those structures, how that we can go to Chicago, learn how they're doing things great, and then come back and hopefully continue to do some fun things. But
Yes. I actually learned about the Chicago trip over the weekend, and it was again, I'm very impressed with how quickly this has grown and what it's grown into. And Hunter, I also went to a Startups UNL event. When was that? Probably 6 weeks ago. And again, there were 80 people there, food, a whole banger. It was quite the community. But the thing that I really left with was the diversity of your guys' members. And a lot of times, especially in university systems, they tout diversity, but they mean like diversity of thought. But it's a bunch of white dudes sitting in a room and they don't all agree, so it's diverse. Startups UNL is actually diverse. It's probably 50-50 male female, majors from every single. Also, I was talking to engineers and I was talking to like teachers and business majors, like all sorts. And then also it appeared that there's members from different communities throughout campus too, from international students to students across the country to Nebraska kids. How did you guys go about engaging the different communities on campus to get involved?
Yeah, so one of the most important things about ecosystems is making them inclusive and accessible and building those access points, those on-ramps to get those students involved. And I'm a huge proponent of, the diversity of thinking like you just kind of talked about, but, we really pride ourselves in being kind of STEAM powered, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Of course, that's, that's different than STEM, right? I say STEAM to encompass, when you come to our event, you're going to talk to scientists, technology people, engineers, artists and mathematicians, right? And the way we have done this though is, we have found leaders that are part of other communities, right? Who exhibit natural tendencies, and they are. I want to talk about this guy named Jonathan Gertis right now. He's a great individual. He was a sophomore last semester, going to be a junior. He was the president of this organization called the Steel Bridge Club. Did some amazing things, got a ton of money from sponsorships, built this huge bridge, very fantastic person. But, he really wanted to start his own thing. He wanted to do his own thing, and he didn't know, like, entrepreneurs, when we're young, we're different people, right? We stand out, we don't really fit in with the natural grain. And so, he knew that he was slightly different, and he found us somehow. I can't even remember how he found us. But he come in and he was like talking to me about his ideas. And, there's that first meeting you have with a student who has no idea that they're an entrepreneur, what entrepreneurship is. And, you realize like, they're different and they want to take their skills and build something and take it to reality. Right. Entrepreneurship is kind of loosely defined oftentimes, but I kind of define it as the ability to take your thought to action, right? To build something with your hands and your skills. And Jonathan really wanted to do this. And so, we are investing back into him. We're teaching him what an ecosystem is, what is entrepreneurship. We're giving him, he's part of our summer impact team as well. So we are giving these students who are these leaders in other parts of campus, the tools and resources to help those people, right? I'm a marketing major in a business discipline by craft, and I don't know how to help an engineer, right? Like I do, I could tell you, we go through the entrepreneurial process, customer discovery, whatever, but they think differently, and they are going to be a different type of entrepreneur. They are going to need more information on IP and patents, how do you design products and how do you take products to market, those types of things. And you have to talk to them differently. So part of the whole initiative of the Summer Impact Team, we have artists, we have engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have ad PR majors. So part of another piece of what it means to be part of the Summer Impact Team is they're going out and identifying these ecosystem like leaders and champions in the different communities, so we can have a playbook. So like when an engineer comes with us, we're like, oh, hey, check out this, or here's a whole how to be an entrepreneur for engineers, right? So we can not necessarily stifle creativity and innovation, because oftentimes on campus, you see these student organizations who are all finance or all marketing, AMA, or you're all one thing or the other, right? You're not a different discipline. The most beautiful thing about Startups UNL is we are different, man. We are not college business. We are everybody together. We work, we play together. And it's so exciting to see these people. And the number one way we get people here is people bring their friends, right? We're a fun group of people. And the more friends you bring, the more people that come and the more free food you have. You asked at the beginning, how do you get young entrepreneurs involved in the ecosystem? You buy free food, right? Free food and they'll come for sure. But it's been a ton of fun. And, there's a huge shift, right? Like Nick, to all your listeners, we are a genesis in youth entrepreneurship right now. So many people, I did a talk at one of our colleges, the Carson Center for Image Media Arts. And I asked people, I was like, hey, like, who wants to work for themselves? And I was like, raise your hand. And a lot of students raised their hand. And what we've been seeing in our population is there's a huge demand to work for yourself. There's no easier time than to start a business right now. Obviously, you want to do it the right way. But my little sister, who's 17 years old, is going to Goodwill, spending literally $200 on merchandise and then selling that through Instagram, in like 2 weeks. I mean, she's got more. I was like taking personal loans from her for a little bit. I was like, and it's just never been easier to do like the arbitrage or the hustle, so easy to build a website. Yeah. Freelancing is huge. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we are, there's a bunch of different types of entrepreneurs, like creative disruption and those types of things. But, we're thinking differently. We've experienced some upheaval right now in the world. We've been pretty much forced to work virtually for a little while, like if you couldn't work virtually, you probably didn't have a job, and I actually knew a ton of people on like unemployment. I mean, just crazy things, man. Like we are seeing the shift in the new decade, right? Like the roaring 20s is going to happen, and it's exciting to see, and that's what we're here to do, right? With Startups UNL, the Center for Entrepreneurship, we're here to help invest in those future leaders who will then, huge fan of the quote, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but you teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. And so that's what we're trying to do is, instill that in the students and help them become mentors to the next students and create this kind of cycle of development. But
yes. Hunter, we always try to highlight venture capital in the different communities that we touch on for the show. And I know there's been a recent venture capital fund geared towards students that both, I believe the students both, monitor and decide what gets invested in. And then it's also they only invest in students. And I know you had a hand to play in that. I'm not going to credit you as the founder because on this one, I'm pretty sure you're not the founder, but I do know you're involved enough to speak onto it. And it's also, there's not that many universities are just now getting into this. So your perspective I'm interested by. But if you want to talk about the fund and then kind of describe your involvement, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely. So the Husker Venture Fund, we are actually one of the only Big Ten schools that to not have a student ran fund. And so I want to shout out Emily Kist and there's another guy. Oh man, I'm going to be in so much trouble.
Emily and her partner.
Emily and her partner are kicking some ass, man. Like they are, I swear, like these guys are knocking down that red tape in the university, right? Like they are literally blazing a trail, right? I have seen them, get resources and really move that needle. I can't say a whole lot because we're still in that red tape phase. And with the university, it gets kind of, troublesome, but I will, she was on a podcast. I can't think of the specific name, but I will shoot you the podcast and that you can jam it and maybe put it in the show notes for your other listeners to check out. But I know that they are doing something so great and so awesome that the students will really benefit from. They're focused on micro funding, and they'll have an emphasis in student ran companies. So they'll really focus on, how do we invest in students? And that's part of an ecosystem is just funds, right? It's just part of being able to get access to cash. And I think with them coming online and the ton of community support behind them has been tremendous. I mean, shout out to the whole Lincoln community that has been involved in that project because, without the Lincoln community, our student organization and our students would not be as successful as right now. I'll tell you one story right now with, aside from the venture fund and with the great things that those guys are doing, we have a student right now. Her name is Megan Castor. And this is an example of the diversity, right? We've got students building venture funds, students with their own marketing companies. We've got students doing their own things and
working in COVID research labs.
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to Ashley Clegg, who is a legitimate scientist. If you haven't seen the episode of the Commonwealth where we interview some scientists, it's super great. Go check it out. You can listen at the Commonwealth. You can find it my link in my bio. The shameless plug. No, but Megan Castor, this is just a story, a huge part of the ecosystem as well as I'm here right now. They just came back in, but I'm in Turbine Flats, a really cool place. And, Megan was part of our, she had a Instagram page called Wild and she was designing shoes. And she came to one of our meetups. We have this thing called Workshop Wednesdays where we start at 7 and we end till everybody, we don't leave till everybody leaves. Right. And this is an opportunity to grind on your startup, get help from somebody. I'm technically like a venture creation advisor. So if you needed to start something, I can help you move the needle or develop a framework that you can actually get help from a subject matter expert. And so, she came to our meetup and she was like, everybody's doing such cool things. And I don't know what to do. And she has the entrepreneurial tendency. She didn't really like the Wild and She thing, and, she really wanted to do cool stuff, right? Like there's a ton of students who know that they are they're different and they want to create and build on their own. And she just didn't know how, right? And our community is kind of the gateway for that, right? You can not have you don't even have to want to build a business or anything. You can just come hang out, right? There's such thing as entrepreneurship as well. And not to get super long winded, but she, was part of our community. And I was like, what's your idea? And, she came to me and she was like, Hunter, like, I want to do a board game cafe. And I was like, that is so cool. How can I help? And she's like, well, I want to do this and this and this. And I'm like, great, cool. Like you have to have the confidence, like where you start is you have to have the confidence to tell people what your idea is. So like go out and start telling people. So she told me that. And I was actually at Turbine Flats taking a tour with Katie. And they actually had an open space in their coffee shop. Right. And so I told Katie and then, they connected and, she's about to do kind of her soft launch, pretty soon. And really open up her own space and really from start to finish, we were, in the Center for Entrepreneurship, planning everything out with her, figuring out how is she going to make this happen from like sitting in the coffee shop, drinking coffee. It's seeing that journey of the entrepreneur. And you don't have to be a highly scalable company. Obviously your demographic of people who are listening to this aren't probably, looking to jump into the, Startups UNL membership. But those of you listening, we have some really cool stories out there that we want to tell you. And if you follow us on the social media stuff, we have some really cool things coming up. We're about to release kind of a spotlight campaign on some of our entrepreneurs. So if you go hit us with a follow, we're always down to, do anything we can to do local collaborations. And also our number one rule, a core value is reciprocity. And so we don't take things without giving back. So, our student community is very intelligent, smart. So we're always down to help other people out.
Yes, hell yes, Hunter. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about was traditionally, if you look at like the history of Nebraska startup ecosystems, there's been a bunch of beef between Lincoln and Omaha on like which one's better, and kind of some infighting between the two. And I'm not talking about not as much today, but like if you turn the clock back a decade or less. There's a bunch of beef. However, Startups UNL is like working with colleges across the state of Nebraska, and the UNL and UMNO groups do a bunch of things together. Can you kind of provide context on that initiative? And I would expect it because it's such a young group of people. They probably didn't know about the existing oh no, Lincoln's better, no, Omaha's better. So I guess to start with, was there any beef or egos at the door, or is that just a previous generation?
I can feel it when I talk to the older guys in the ecosystem. And I was the young, naive student just reaching out, trying to get my students resources. And I felt it a little bit. But, there are people out there like Levi Cermak and, Erica Wazinger, those kind of people. We have I See It Ventures, Gordon and those guys over there, their team is fantastic. I was actually intern for Event Vesta over there. They are, they're part of that next genesis of entrepreneurship and collaboration. I think with these virtualness, I think that bridge is being kind of, bridged, right? I would say, diving into kind of our relationship with the university, I have a dream to build, our student community up where it's accessible by UNO and UNK. I mean, UNK is out in the middle of nowhere, dog. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but it's never been easier to build a virtual community. And, so it makes sense not to, right? Like it makes sense not to share our resources. The number one rule in ecosystems is focus on entrepreneurs and give them everything you got, right? So like, why wouldn't you come together and pull your resources together and really invest in these kids, man? They're doing some great things. So, as the young, naive entrepreneur, I was like, who's the president of your student organization? So we got connected. I got connected with, his name is, man, I'm blanking on names today, but he's
it is really tough, and you've done a good job of giving credit throughout. Austin?
Yes, Justin.
Oh, yeah.
He is the guy. Yeah, he is my guy. He is no longer the president, but he is actually a highly awarded CEO president with CEOs as student collegiate entrepreneurs organization. We also got in touch with this girl, Sierra McKinney from UNK. And we actually had this event, Startups UNL sponsored event called the Young Founders Meetup. And we had one founder from each community, just jump on and have a conversation, what it's like to build a company in Omaha, what it's like to build a company in Lincoln, and what it's like to build a company in UNK. And that was so much fun. And we actually, loved it so much. We built a group chat, and actually, I'm glad that you took it down this road, but we are working on developing an organization for, really early started young entrepreneurs who are in their like junior, senior year of college, transitioning into the workforce, called Young Entrepreneurs Evolution. Through our, opportunity to reach out, I got in contact with this guy from Minnesota, doing the same, like pretty much the me over there, right? Doing the same things. And, I found other me's from around the United States, and we wanted to build this student organization that is focused on building Midwest entrepreneurs with a global mindset. So we actually, built a Slack channel, and, like entrepreneurs, we just go to market as fast as we can. And it's the network effects. We told everybody in those little smaller ecosystems, and now we're building up this community. We've got, people from California, Minnesota, Iowa, Oklahoma. I mean, we got just this diverse mix of students who are part of Young Entrepreneurs Evolution, which is a direct relationship with Startups UNL. And it feeds into that, right? So I built it because I wanted you, in your time in Startups UNL, I wanted you to be able to do great things. And then once you transition, you still have this community to support you and build you up and continue to not necessarily hold your hand, but be a friendly face, and be young, right? We're all going through this crazy COVID, insurrection stuff together as young people. And, I know that it's really important to listen to the people who are experienced and wise and stuff, but the young people, man, are going to take over the world someday, and consumer preferences are shifting. Mm-hmm. We're getting older. Gen Z is getting older, man. And so there will be this inflection point where, and we've already seen it with social media and digital things that, but our long-term goal, again, not to get super long-winded, but that global mindset piece, we have actually created partnerships with two organizations, one in Egypt and one in India. And so we're actually, kind of being a bridge for this diversity around the world to not only how can we connect students in the Midwest with a focus on entrepreneurship, but how can we bring people across the entire world together to the Midwest and show them, what a great place it is to be in the Midwest, to work, play in the Midwest. And, we're the next hub, man. Like Silicon Valley is there, right? But it's dying. People are flooding there. It's cheap to build companies here. We have talent. We're a university-based research institution for positioning Lincoln as kind of this hub from Egypt and India and those types of things. We're not really sure. We're still in the development phase. Myself and the co-founder, Cameron Stone. But we're super stoked, and we've had a lot of traction, and it'll be a ton of fun to see where that goes and how we can continue to, I think it was just an excuse for me to continue my student organization journey outside of college. But it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yes. Well, Hunter, where can people connect with you beyond this podcast?
Check out my LinkedIn, LinkedIn/LN or IN/Hunter Bergman. And then Instagram is hbergman98. Twitter, I believe it's Bergman 93. I don't know why it was the 93. I should probably flatline those, but reach out, connect with me. I love talking to people. Whether you listen to this and you have something that maybe you want to give back to the students, I would love to facilitate that conversation. Or if you need something from the students, if you need a focus group, if you need anything, we are here to be a service and an asset to the community just as much as the community is an asset to us. So open up, email, and message me, whatever it takes. I'm sure we'll get in contact. If you reach out to me, we probably know each other through mutual friends. So
yeah, heck yes, Hunter. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm about to link up with Caitlin Clays, who I know you're also friends with, and Caitlin has a show for mug.news called Coffee Grinds, and Hunter was one of the first guests on that. So Hunter is definitely a friend of the show, and you'll have to come back on soon. I'm excited to see all of these projects develop.
Absolutely, Nick. This was a great opportunity to kind of say what we're doing at the university and just kind of open the door to, the rest of the community. That's what kind of we're all about. So thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yep, of course.
Now that we've learned about an ecosystem from the person building it, I'm going to link back up with Caitlin to clarify some jargon and take a deeper dive into this community.
Hey, Nick, how was your interview with Hunter?
So my interview with Hunter was amazing. He's so engaging and so enthusiastic about whatever he's talking about, and it was just fun. It was fun to talk to him in this setting because I'm with him so much, but actually like kind of hearing his backstory and having him talk about his projects as opposed to like hyping up his projects. He is the best hype man, but it's good to kind of have the limelight shown on him, and it was a wonderful conversation. He says hello, by the way.
Oh, good. Yes, I also know Hunter, so it's always super fun to get him and on any show that we have. So moving then on, what was your biggest takeaway after your conversation with him?
Biggest takeaway is, so there's a few. He started a Startups UNL club at UNL, and as we touched on the interview, it's a very diverse group. And I asked him, how did you get? And Caitlin, I'm sure you have the equal eye roll of like, especially in academic institutions, it seems that like they use the term diversity of thought as a way of diversity of like, oh, we're diverse, we have diverse thought. It's like that's the like lowest bar of diversity ever. Like Caitlin and I, we're like friends and can agree on most things, but if you try to tout diversity, like we also like the fact we also disagree on things, that doesn't mean, like diversity of thought is BS. But Hunter's club is actually diverse. Like they hit every single major. They have scientists, they have engineers, they have mathematicians, they have business majors, they have international students, they have Nebraska students, they have students from big cities, small cities. That it's actually very, very just, I guess, inspiring. I went to an event a couple of weeks ago with him, and it was just like cool to meet all these people from all the different corners of the world that think differently and act differently, but also like in the same community, really thriving. And I asked him how that happened, and he said they went and they looked to isolate leaders from different communities and just engage them and ask them questions and ask how they can help them. And that while it is in the microcosm of a unit, like in the university system at this one club, I do think that tactic can be applied regardless of where your ecosystem is. That huge props with Hunter on that. And then the other thing, it was interesting. He credited when he took over the organization. I thought he founded Startups UNL. I was wrong. He basically just rebranded a club. But that same club, when I was on campus, it like no one knew it. Like there were probably like 5 members, just not significant at all. And now it's like this big thing on campus. And he credited it to these Zoom meetings they would have, that it was like open invite and they would just send the link out. And they called them Founder Fridays and then like Coffee Mondays or whatever. And the Mondays you would just like chat. But then on Founder Friday, they invited different local entrepreneurs to come just ask entrepreneur the question. And because I did one, I did one of the Founder Fridays, and a whole bunch of people, like there were probably like 60 kids on a Zoom call, like asking questions, and he credited both of those things to like really just taking off, like having the club take off. And neither are too complicated. It's just like a Zoom call. You just set up a Zoom meeting and then have a very, very loose format. And Hunter prepped some questions, but it was super casual. And I think it goes to show that like ecosystem building, like the term, even it sounds scientific and complicated and like the big, scary, hairy type of thing. But pretty simple things like setting up a Zoom call can really have the community take off and really thrive.
Absolutely. And it's also, again, one of those things with an ecosystem, in order to thrive, it has to have a lot of diversity. And you're right, we do throw that word around a ton. But with someone like Hunter Bergman, who is one of the most sincere and authentic people I've met, like entrepreneurship wise, he's just so with it. But that's like, again, if he I can see anywhere he puts his energy is going to like something is going to great come from it. So it is really cool though to have like people who aren't even in the same branch, major, that kind of thing, throw them all together. That's fantastic. That's the best way we're going to have a more united community in general. So that is so cool to hear how he was able to kind of like promote that within his club and rebrand that awesomely. So then, after that, was there anything that you needed to look up?
So no, not really. There was one thing I would have touched on, and with our listeners being ecosystem builders from throughout the Midwest, but also like they've had more of a career than Hunter, I would say. I would hate to use the OLD word, but they're slightly more mature. They have more years under their belt, and the one thing I really would have touched on was Hunter's work to engage students with local entrepreneurs and how valuable that is for the startup. That like those entrepreneurs intern for the startup companies, they go to work for the startup companies, and it's a huge value to the community to engage young people. And that's one thing I potentially we should bring Hunter on in like 6 months to a year, just kind of like he should be a recurring character. Next time he's on, we should really touch on that because that is it's something it would have taken 15 extra minutes, but really I think it's important, and especially if you're close to a university or but even high school kids, engaging young people in your local ecosystem is important. So that was the one thing, like looking back on it, I was like, oh my gosh, we kind of missed that part. But that's not necessarily like a definition, but still kind of fits the question, sort of.
Oh, absolutely. And, speaking of him being a reoccurring character, before we completely close out our final statements, Hunter Bergman is actually going to be featured on the Coffee Grinds. I had an interview with him as well on a separate time. So you are touching on all of the points where I'm like, yes, if you want to hear more about exactly what you're saying, Nick, you should definitely check out Coffee Grinds when his episode comes up. But
I actually plugged the Coffee Grinds in the interview because I thought it was already out. So I'm sorry.
It is. It totally is. Yep.
No, but is Hunter's interview on Coffee Grinds out?
Not yet. It has yet to be published, but he is definitely one of our key features on there as well. So.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Cool.
So I stand corrected from earlier in the episode. It is about to come out. It's not on our YouTube channel yet. When I go to upload YouTube videos, I see it scheduled on the Hunter Bergman. Yeah. So I just assumed it was out after I'd seen it a couple times, but it is scheduled to be released. So go subscribe to the Mug News YouTube channel to go watch it eventually.
Right. And then, okay, thank you so much again for the plug. Coffee Grinds, everyone. If you like coffee puns and student entrepreneurs, that's the place for you. Yeah. But back to our show, Ecosystem Builder Podcast. Do you have any final thoughts or final takeaways after with Hunter?
So we had a Mug News meeting last Friday, and we talked about the value of ecosystem building, of the kind of champion of it, of just rah, this is awesome, cheerleader, hype man. Actually, I would probably say hype man. And Hunter Bergman is a hype man, and hype mans are needed in an ecosystem. So find your local Hunter Bergman and both develop him as a leader and give him support and confidence to be your local hype man. But Caitlin, that is it. Do you want to read us out?
Absolutely, and very well said, Nick. Get your hype man.
Yeah.
Find your local Hunter Bergman. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Ecosystem Builder Podcast, which is a product of mug.news, hosted by Nick Kastner and Caitlin Clays. If you have any questions about today's episode, connect with us on Twitter at Nick Kastner, at Clays Creates, or at Mug News Official. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share with your friends. We release episodes every Wednesday morning, so make sure to follow so you don't miss a beat.
Bye-bye.